The story kicks off when a super creepy purple rift just casually pops up floating in midair. The city's daily grind goes on chill as ever with folks strolling around, while the military locks down the portal's perimeter to keep everyone safe and sound. Right then, Yoon Gon is strutting down the street totally hyped, flexing that today is his official Independence Day from the orphanage. Thinking about the rough patches of growing up without a family, our MC focuses on the bright side of scoring that sweet government settlement cash. He remembers a hot tip from an old buddy who warned him that going frugal on food would pay off 3 times as much down the line. Back in the day, young Gon was mind blown by the idea of leveling up his bank account just by cutting out burgers. Snapping back to the present, the kid parks himself right outside the bank, looking pleased as punch, knowing that little life hack actually made his savings account thick. Oozing confidence, he heads in to drop off the cash and secure the rent for his brand new pad. But spoiler alert, that chill vibe is about to get wrecked, since some dude rocking a freaky mask is strolling right up to the front doors. Inside the bank, Gon coolly asks the teller to wire the funds and set up a youth account. Crunching the numbers, the guy breathes a sigh of relief seeing he'll still have a solid chunk of change to live comfortably while job hunting. Out of nowhere, the bad guy bursts into the lobby, causing a massive scene. Everyone just freezes, trying to process the sheer audacity of this crook acting so wildly out of pocket. Wielding a sword, the trespasser orders everyone to freeze, totally bumming out Gon, who just wants to vibe in peace. Pure panic spreads through the room as the robber pushes forward, bullying the customers and forcing everyone to put their hands in the air. Just to make sure they get the message, the baddie points the blade and demands nobody moves an inch. A security guard jumps into action, unholstering his piece and telling the crook to back the heck up. Not even sweating it, the masked dude straight up dares the rent-a-cop to pull the trigger. The robber's face is just dripping with absolute mockery. In a flash, the criminal zips across the room with some mind-bending speed. With crazy slick moves, the bad guy closes the gap and gets practically nose-to-nose with the guard. Flexing his ego, the invader dares the guard to take the shot once again. Watching this totally unhinged behavior, Gon figures this guy is most likely an awakened. It's been over 10 years since reality got flipped upside down by these mysterious gates popping up everywhere. Out of those rifts came some gnarly monsters, forcing fighters to step up to the front lines to keep humanity from getting wiped off the map. After scoring some mystical buffs, these folks could actually go toe-to-toe with the danger. They totally bypassed regular human limits to handle the absolute chaos of battle. They became internet famous as the overpowered and scary awakened. Shifting back to the absolute meltdown at the bank, the MC realizes standard issue gear is going to be straight garbage if this guy is actually superhuman. Out of options, the guard takes his shot right at the baddie. The bullet rips through the air at crazy speed straight for the crook. Hyped for a clash, the antagonist shows zero doubt in his own busted stats. With a flick of his sword, the masked dude swings hard and slices the projectile right in half like it's a piece of cake. The bank folks are absolutely shook by this flex of superhuman strength. The bullet pieces clatter to the floor behind him, while the crook holds his edgy pose. Gon and the rest of the crowd are sweating bullets over this spooky skill. Finding the whole thing hilarious, the bad guy just soaks up the room's chaotic energy. But then a totally clutch shot nails the masked dude before he even sees it coming. Guessing bullets are actually pretty fast after all, the guy drops to the floor and lets go of the sword, getting instantly clapped. An awkward silence fills the room, and the MC quips that someone totally lied about Awakened being able to deflect bullets. Taking advantage of the coast being clear, the guard asks if anyone caught a scratch in the madness. That freaky eyeball jammed into the defeated crook's sword suddenly starts glowing on the floor. Leaking this mega sketchy aura, the artifact totally roasts its former user, calling him useless garbage for getting taken down so easily. The shady item tries to grab the attention of the folks nearby, promising crazy buffs to whoever wields it. Everyone is just paralyzed in front of the entity, which keeps nagging them to farm karma so they can evolve into superior beings. An elderly lady tries to step up, wanting that power to teach her hubby a lesson, but her grandkid holds her back with everything she's got. While a mom begs the heavens for a bailout and a dude starts praying, another guy completely loses his chill and walks forward, brainwashed by the promise of becoming overpowered. A bunch of guys start moving toward the floor, totally puppeteered by the freaky energy. Watching this whole weird vibe, Gon has zero clue why everyone is acting so out of pocket. A hot minute later, some purple mojo wraps around the MC, who gets totally hypnotized and suddenly really wants that sword. Right as the other dudes reach out to grab the loot, the kid sprints past everyone with some absolute sonic speed. Rocking a straight-up unhinged face, he freaks out the bystanders, who scream for someone to block the kid from touching the thing. Going full tank mode, Gon bulldozes through the other brainwashed people, tossing them aside like ragdolls. The guard desperately tries to block the lane, shouting that the kid isn't getting past him. Totally ignoring the warning, the youngster just steps on the guard, using him as a literal trampoline to keep moving. Without missing a beat, he grips the handle of the shady artifact. A massive wave of purple energy surges into the kid's body, and he lets out this totally unhinged laugh while the entity takes the wheel. The shady sword pulses aggressively, flooding the room with even heavier bad vibes. The guy drops to his knees on the floor, gripping the weapon tight while the spooky energy hacks his whole system. Further back, the other brainwashed customers are crying literal tears of saltiness because they missed out on the epic loot. Snapping out of it, the guard cautiously shuffles over and asks if the kid is doing okay. Still on his knees, the youth stays mute with his face down, completely zoned out of reality. Deep inside his own headspace, he meets the shady entity, which welcomes him as its shiny new user. The weird voice drops a disclaimer that to seal the deal, the kid has to fork over his most prized possession. Fighting the mind control, our MC is sweating under the pressure, while the being asks if he's really going to decline the terms of service. The entity tries to bait him, hyping up the exact power he needs to boss up and never get played again. Caving to the hype, Gon whispers that he wants in on the deal, and the voice demands the offering ASAP. A creepy, intense look takes over the guy's face. Back in the bank, the guard is shook when the student suddenly pops up holding the sword. Striking a super edgy pose, the MC stands tall with the artifact, staying completely quiet. Right after, he lets out this bizarre yell, his eyes glowing like crazy. The panic hits part 2 when the guy suddenly swings the blade, making the crowd shriek thinking they're about to get wrecked. Paying zero attention to the terrified customers, the kid sprints at top speed straight for the teller's window. Rocking a literal maniac smile, he slams his hand on the marble counter super hard. The teller is totally lost when she realizes that instead of hurting anyone, the kid just slid over his little savings book. The worker casually lets him know his transaction was a total success, while Gon just stands there quiet and motionless in the middle of a trashed room. Absolutely dumbfounded by the kid's moves, the shady entity asks if that was literally his most precious thing, to which the boy proudly claims he just dropped over 30 million. Flexing extreme confidence, the MC grips the weapon and roasts the sword, calling the being big dumb and saying it's while the item actually thought its power was too top tier to be bought with plain old cash. Strutting forward, the young dude demands the powers he paid for be delivered right this second. A blue-haired girl in a suit stares at the whole scene totally baffled, while the boy, trying to clear things up, says cash is his one true love and if the blade won't take it, he's getting a refund. Holding a totally no-nonsense vibe, the newcomer orders the kid not to move another muscle. In a flash, she reaches into her jacket to flash her badge. Dropping the badge with major boss energy, the girl announces she's with a mega-important security unit. She drops her name as Kang Chung HWA, part of the Special Task Force, and tells the guy to drop the loot and surrender immediately. The kid absolutely bricks it when he hears the squad's name, instantly remembering the rumors that these cops permanently take out anyone who skips out on orders. Totally freaking out, the MC chucks the shady artifact on the floor and throws his hands up as high as they go, desperately asking if they're cool now. Chung HWA just stares at the guy in absolute silence, trying to read the super weird room. Trying to kill the tension, he points at the floor and points out he did exactly what she told him to. But the chill is super temporary, because the magical blade zips right back into the guy's hand in literally 1 second. Dropping an evil chuckle, the entity warns that trying to drop the weapon is useless, since the contract glued them together forever, leaving Gon totally paralyzed with fear. Assuming the perp is resisting arrest, the agent extends her arm and starts charging up this glowing blue energy. A high-tech combat cannon materializes on the woman's arm, all dialed in to blast. Pointing the energy blaster right at him, she sends the kid into total meltdown mode, making him wave his hands begging for a timeout. Sweating buckets, Gon tries to explain he totally wants to drop the weapon too, complaining that the cursed item is just a battle junkie that keeps flying back into his inventory on its own. Not buying the sketchy excuse at all, the girl finishes charging up her finisher moves core. Seeing he's about to catch the ultimate fade, the kid screams with all his lungs that he gives up for real this time. Making things way worse, the toxic entity keeps screaming in his brain, hyping the boy up to smack the lady and fix the issue with straight-up violence. Suddenly, that same brainwashed granny grabs the MC from behind, begging for the dark buff to teach her husband a lesson, proving the mind control wore off for literally everyone but her. A bit later, the hype dies down and the young guy ends up in a super bright interrogation room. Chung Hwa stands guard by the door, while the squad boss, Park Du-kyung, introduces himself looking all official behind the desk. Dropping a friendly laugh, the boss confirms Gaon's backstory as a jobless orphan and tries to make things a bit less awkward. Feeling way better about the change of scenery, the kid says thanks for clearing up the huge misunderstanding, mentioning he almost got utterly erased back at the bank. The girl looks away, super annoyed by his comment, while Du-kyung finds it funny and jokes that his partner is a bit of a tryhard for not trusting him right off the bat. Flipping the switch to serious mode, the older guy warns that the kid's status is still a giant mess, since he basically signed a TOS with a cursed item. He breaks it down, saying these magical drops from the portals totally fry their users' brains and lead to some gnarly disasters. The squad boss keeps dropping lore, making it clear it'll be insanely tough to unequip the item from the kid, unless the contract gets fully cancelled. Despite the heavy news, Du-kyung chills the boy out by stating the blade is super low tier, pointing out that even a young dude managed to tank its mind control. Holding the sword, the MC straight up roasts the entity for being weak sauce, which totally triggers the weapon, who insults the kid, calling him arrogant and pointing out he was literally the only one who actually got brainwashed. A scary realization clicks in the kid's brain, and he looks up as he connects the dots from the chat. Utterly mind blown, he asks the boss if the bit about breaking the contract is actually legit. Leaning on the desk, Gaon starts crying because he literally dumped all his cash just to seal the deal with the blade. Showing pretty much zero pity, the older dude nods and argues that a dark item is always going to spawn headaches, no matter what. Taking the L, the young guy tries to find the silver lining of the disaster, choosing to frame his financial wipeout as a charity run, since the cash went straight to the orphanage that raised him. Outside the building, the boss walks the kid to the exit and tells him to watch his back from now on, giving him a heads up to call if anything spooky goes down. Watching the boy bounce, Chung Hwa asks if it's really a big brain move to let a regular civilian roam free packing a shady artifact, totally breaking standard protocol. Without a word, Du-kyung just distractedly rubs a red gemstone ring on his own finger. Keeping his cool, he excuses it by saying the containment zone is completely maxed out, and they literally have zero storage space for the kid right now. The boss keeps spinning the bling, looking kinda stressed. A sketchy energy leaks from the older guy's hand, hinting he's dealing with some heavy internal debuffs in his own system. Trying to hide the struggle, the dude lets out a heavy sigh and tries to get his breathing right before his partner catches on. Glancing at his hand, Du-kyung points out they wouldn't even have the specs to forcefully unequip the item from the kid anyway, and asks if the agent could even pull it off. The blue-haired girl lifts her hands, staring at her gloves as she calculates the odds of making that play. Showing a frustrated look, she admits she doesn't have the stats to break the link. Validating her doubts, the boss agrees and points out that a human infected by this dark energy pretty much never dodges their bad ending. A shadow drops over the older guy's face the second he claims that, eventually, every single host ends up completely corrupted by the dark side. Circling back to the kid's super weird behavior, the man thinks it's wild the boy actually managed to yeet the blade away on purpose during the interrogation. Plus, he points out how backwards it is that the deal was sealed purely with money, while regular NPC citizens tanked the entity's bait with zero effort. Strolling casually down the street, Du-kyung figures the artifact just isn't dangerous enough to trigger an emergency ban, which makes letting him go a lot easier. Hooked on the theory, Chung Hwa suggests maybe the sword is just such a garbage tier drop that it can't even mess with its user's sanity. Peeking from a distance behind a barricade, the boss shuts down the idea that the kid is rocking some kind of plot armor or magic shield. The officer agrees instantly, remembering there's literally zero record of anyone having 100% mental immunity since the rifts spawned on Earth. Adjusting his shades, Du-kyung wraps up the chat, declaring the big brain play is to just keep tabs on the orphan's moves. Far away from the cops, the MC is walking down the sunny block looking down, trying to process the absolute circus his life just became. Trying not to ruin the day for harmless NPCs, the guy stops in front of an empty convenience store. The second he steps through the glass doors, a sweet cashier hits him with a welcome. Totally drained and starving after the bank drama, Gaon walks in dragging the blade, which sends the worker into immediate panic mode. Standing frozen at the register, the guy tells the artifact to shut its mouth about fighting because he just wants to eat his snacks in peace, while the worker watches, totally convinced the customer has lost his marbles. The card reader hits him with the classic error beep, and the cashier awkwardly mentions the guy's account is sitting at a solid zero. The MC finally connects the dots, going into mega tilt mode when he realizes he is literally flat broke. Waving the sword in the air, the youth demands his cash back, screaming that he just wants some ramen, while the entity points out that was literally the subscription fee for the contract. As if the vibe couldn't get any worse, the crazy lady storms into the shop screaming, still demanding that dark buff to go smack her husband. The worker ducks behind the counter, totally terrified, while the boy tries to fend off the aggro grandma who keeps charging at him. Right in the middle of the mess, a cop casually walks into the shop asking if anyone spotted a missing senior citizen in the area. Taking one look at the sketchy scene, the officer pulls his piece instantly and tells the kid to put his hands up. Reading the room in literally the worst way possible, the cop assumes the MC is trying to jump the old lady. Freaking out over this brand new problem, Gon yells that the whole thing is just a massive misunderstanding, but the blade keeps vibrating and the grandma is still crying out for power. Outside the shop, Chung-Hwa and Du Kyung are watching the absolute clown show through the window, realizing they're gonna have to carry this guy again. Keeping his observer vibe, the boss points out that a human straight up ignoring the dark side's temptation is something that has literally never happened in the lore. Letting out a massive sigh at the nonsense unfolding, the older dude repeats that, for now, their job is just to keep watching the kids' goofy antics. 7 days after the bank incident, the MC is trekking through the city streets sweating in the crazy heat. Completely out of gas, Gon drags himself down the sidewalk, forced to lug the cursed artifact with him literally everywhere. Crossing paths with folks, he's catching all sorts of side-eye, with people whispering the guy must be a total psycho walking around with a weapon like that. Gritting his teeth, the youngster tries to ignore the haters, while some low-key rage builds up in his brain. He glares at the shady item with pure saltiness, blaming the drop for wrecking his peace and canceling his normal life. The anger triggers a flashback to the last 7 days, when he was trying to score a job and waiting his turn at an interview. In the room, the recruiters were staring at the door full of hope, waiting for the next applicant to step up. With zero way to unequip the item, Gon walked in carrying the sword, hyping himself up and swearing to dedicate his whole life to the corporate grind. Trying to look friendly, the boy flashed a super weird smile that made him look like an absolute maniac. Terrified by the spooky vibe, the hiring managers lost it and instantly rejected the applicant, labeling him a straight-up criminal. So yeah, the first attempt at getting a legit job ended in a massive L. Trying for a courier gig, he got bounced fast too, since lifting heavy boxes while packing a major threat just wasn't going to work. Over at a retail shop, the hiring dude was terrified of the item, while the MC was basically begging for a chance to explain himself. The same disaster happened at the restaurant, where the manager said a server walking around fully strapped was definitely not the vibe. Outside the shops, the kid adjusted his tie feeling super salty, realizing he had to find a glitch to drop the weapon before his interviews. Luckily, he stumbled onto a company where the recruiter didn't even care about the artifact and actually hyped up the kid's hustle. The guy bragged about his top-tier vibe check skills, praising Gon's friendly and hardworking energy before telling him he got the job. Super stoked about the new hire, the man offered his hand for a shake, saying they were officially fam now. Feeling a massive wave of relief, the kid smiled and leaned in a bit to accept the handshake. The exact millisecond their hands were about to touch and seal the deal. The boss' eyes went wide instantly, totally shook by what just spawned. With zero warning, the cursed artifact materialized flying right between them, interrupting the handshake and nearly causing a total disaster. In full panic mode, the recruiter started screaming for security, roasting the kid and slapping another rejection on his resume. Snapping back to the present, the MC is just standing frozen on the sidewalk, reliving that brutal losing streak. Shaking with rage, he glares at the item and vents that every single awful thing happening is 100% this shady entity's fault. His patience totally zeroed out, he yeets the sword as far as he can with max effort and tells the thing to delete itself from his life forever. But the second the item leaves his render distance, the guy notices his right hand is still stuck in the exact same grip as before. Like magic, the item respawns solid and flawless right back in his palm, proving it's literally impossible to drop it. Emotionally absolutely wrecked, the young guy starts crying tears of pure defeat, screaming at the top of his lungs for the thing to bug off. Not caring about the user's misery at all, The creepy voice orders the kid to just accept his awful fate and start farming evil points, ideally involving a lot of bloodshed. Flexing a look of pure boredom, Gon stops the drama and warns it that he has zero interest in joining this villain arc. Suddenly, a super aggressive purple energy explodes around him, forcing the kid to drop to his knees while the being mocks his useless 7 days of stubbornness. The monster demands he respect the TOS, telling the kid to unleash his darkest intrusive thoughts and start causing absolute chaos. Dealing with an insane headache, the guy grabs his face and groans while the magic malware hacks into his brain. Fighting like crazy to keep from getting mind-controlled, he tries to hold onto his sanity against the overwhelming wave of evil. Slowly though, a super sketchy smile starts creeping onto the kid's face. Accepting the L, the boy stands up covered in shadows and agrees to stop capping his cruel urges, swearing to walk the path of a true menace. Right then, he reaches into his jacket and fast draws some snack wrappers. Flashing a psycho look, the kid reveals 3 healthy granola bars under the streetlights. Completely piloted by the dark energy, he rips the plastic wrappers open in a terrifying fit of the munchies. With absolutely zero chill, the guy shoves all the bars into his mouth at the same time, devouring them like an absolute wild animal. Watching this goofy scene, the sword is totally lost and asks what on earth he is actually trying to do. Chewing through the pain, the MC claps back with a scary voice that he just inhaled all his energy bars that were supposed to last the whole day. To top off his ultimate villain play, he crushes the empty wrappers in his fist with major disrespect. Dripping with rebel energy, the kid chucks the trash toward an empty playground and screams to announce his reign of terror. Totally disgusted by the cringe scene, the dark entity yells, demanding to know what the point of this circus even is. Feeling like the final boss, the boy points at the item and brags proudly that he totally skipped recycling and threw the garbage into a literal kid's zone. The artifact literally starts shaking with rage and curses out its user, asking if he seriously thinks this clownery actually farms dark energy. The being's screech acts like an alarm clock, and the purple aura instantly vanishes from the kid's body. Staring at his own hands, the boy goes into maximum shock as he realizes the absolute madness he just pulled. Flooded with guilt, he cries dramatically, blaming the artifact for corrupting him to the point of committing such a horrific crime against Mother Nature. On the flip side, the dark artifact just quietly mutters that it is rapidly running out of patience with the kid's negative IQ. Moving at top speed, Gon sprints to the playground, picks up all the trash from the dirt, and properly dunks it in the recycling bin. Letting out a huge sigh of relief, he parks by the trash can and mutters that he managed to cancel out his massive war crime just in time. But the chill vibe is short-lived because the dark energy suddenly explodes around his body again, way more aggressively this time. As he gets swallowed by the angry magic, he remembers older Du Kaiyang's warning, who said that breaking the magic rules of cause and effect triggers some brutal penalties. Tanking the shock of the penalty for undoing an evil deed, the guy lets out a scream of pure agony. The terror is so intense that he wakes up gasping for air and completely panicked a little while later. Sitting on the floor of his room with his clothes all messed up, the youngster tries to figure out how he even got there. He checks out his room, noticing the vibe in the place is completely off. The second his hand touches the floor, the kid instantly realizes the ground is way too toasty for this time of day. Checking the AC, he sees the unit is blasting on max settings. To make things worse, his bedroom window is fully cranked open, letting all the cold air escape right out into the wild. Getting hit with a massive wave of panic, the guy figures he just committed a mega-tier environmental crime and his power and gas bills are going to straight-up ruin him. He screams in terror, guessing the magic penalty forced him to commit even worse atrocities while he was AFK. His brain gets flooded with random flashbacks of the savage stuff he might have done, like just pointing a lost NPC in the right direction instead of physically escorting them to their waypoint. Another horrific memory was noticing someone rushing to catch the elevator and literally just ignoring the hold door button. The ultimate sin would be sneaking a seat in the priority section on the bus just because his stamina was drained. Feeling the massive guilt of these unforgivable crimes, the MC pulls his own hair and screams in total despair, bullied by his own mind. While he suffers pacing back and forth, the sword cuts through the drama, complaining about the awful temperature and demanding he turn off the room's lights. Right in the middle of the dramatic acting, the boy's stomach drops a loud growl, totally killing all the anxiety in the room. With his head down, he feels like an even bigger clown for actually being hungry after committing so many crimes, while the artifact quietly complains about this being labeled an atrocity. Ignoring the creepy voice, the kid yanks open the bright fridge and sighs when he sees there is literally zero loot inside to eat. Out of options, the scene cuts to the front of a local neighborhood convenience store nearby. Inside the shop, a pack of meat with a massive discount sticker is chilling in the display case. Holding the meat tray in the store, Gon is super hyped to have sniped the item with such an epic discount. Walking to the register, the guy freaks out the other shoppers and the store worker because he's hauling that massive artifact on his back. Right then, a store guard checks the kid with a pretty harsh tone. The guard warns him that even if he's a hunter, roaming around public lobbies with weapons is a ban offense, making the kid apologize instantly. Up at the checkout counter, he hands over the item and politely asks the worker to run the charge on his government welfare card. Super impressed by his payment method, the older lady asks if the guy isn't part of the Hunters Guild. Explaining that folks shouldn't flex weapons to avoid disasters, she gives the kid a solid lecture about the risks. With the card reader beeping, the transaction for the meat finally gets the green light from the bank. Speed running out of there, the MC begs for forgiveness for the messy vibes he caused, while the worker is still yelling inside the shop. A little later, the camera zooms in on the basic, no-frills apartment building where the kid lives. Chilling comfortably in his own bed, he thinks about how he got totally mistaken for a pro just because of the sword lying around. A light bulb goes off in his head, realizing that if he formally picks this class, nobody will think it's weird that he roams around strapped. Moving fast, the guy grabs his phone and starts Googling lore about this dangerous new gig online. The wikis explain that, after the rifts spawned, a whole new class was created literally just to block the monsters from entering the server. To counter this permanent aggro, the national military acted as the first-wave tanks against the dark mobs. On top of the regular troops, the Control Agency launched an elite squad to get the chaos under control. As the days went on, random civilians also popped up grinding, as freelance pros to dive into the dark zones past the gates. Checking the patch notes, the young guy realizes he needs to clear a competency exam from the agency to unlock that sweet official license. Lounging on the bed, he gets mega hyped realizing this guild usually farms insane amounts of cash by betting their lives on these raids. But the chill vibes end when the dark being wakes up screaming for food, giving the owner of the house a major jump scare. Roasting the kid, the entity claims even normal weapons could clap a trash-tier mob, demanding he farm energy way faster. Not caring much about the trash talk, the MC just wonders if the item would be cool with something like its first request. So he gets up wielding the artifact and agrees to drop a liquid form meal, making the being absolutely thrilled with the update. The ruby jammed in the metal shines super bright, celebrating that it's finally about to cure its ancient thirst. Out of nowhere, the hype energy pauses, and the item shows a little hesitation about what it's actually about to chug. A massive flood of power hits the inside of the sword right after, causing a volcanic reaction in the shady entity's brain. Chugging the juice, the being feels like it's chilling by an epic healing waterfall after surviving a massive drought. Slowly booting back up, the blade asks why the potion is so incredibly salty and guesses humanity has been eating complete garbage. Noticing a very weird scent in the meal, the item ends up blaming modern society's crazy high-fat macros for the unique flavor profile. Off-screen, Gon pops up in the bathroom, zipping his shorts back up in a highly questionable stance. Hyped about the massive feast it just got, the dark being lets out a cozy sigh and admits the meal actually slapped. Rinsing the artifact in the bathroom shower, the kid figures the organic fluid he dropped did the trick perfectly. Thinking on it for a sec, he realizes if the blade was totally fine absorbing its owner's own liquid, it'd definitely absorb any mob's energy too. Curious about the lore behind the exotic potion, the entity asks exactly where the kid farmed all that power from. Lying through his teeth with a smile and zero shame, the boy makes up a story about how he extracted the liquid by beating up a handsome dude walking down the street. Obviously, the sword spots the cap immediately, calling him out that a coward who feels bad about dropping trash on the ground wouldn't pull such an alpha move. Carefully drying the blade with a clean cloth, the owner just takes the L on the lie, while the item keeps demanding the actual lore. Keeping up the mystery, the kid stays totally mute cleaning the steel without arguing back at all. The evil being finally connects the dots, going into maximum shock as it realizes it just consumed something incredibly gross. Hitting a scary pose, Gon claps back claiming the source of the fluid is completely irrelevant as long as the main quest objective was cleared. Totally stun-locked by the kid's flawless logic, the entity listens as he kicks off an old-school story about ancient philosophy. The classic lore tells the side quest of a super smart and famous dude named Great Master Wonhyo. One night, this epic master had to camp out in a super creepy cave and ended up sipping water from a bowl nearby to heal his thirst. When the sun came up, the daylight revealed that his supposedly refreshing bowl was actually a literal human skull full of rainwater. The jump scare gave the scholar major bad vibes, but right after he unlocked an epiphany, understanding why the water tasted so godly the night before. Striking a pose just like a meditating Buddhist deity, the MC preaches that all pain and pleasure are purely rendered by your own brain. Flexing a holy aura around his face, he tries to brainwash the entity that what it drank was just the biological urge to live taking form. Mega big brain words float around the room in gold, dropping knowledge that form is nothingness and nothingness becomes form depending on your POV. Keeping the TED Talk going, the youngster claims that if the artifact accepts this cosmic patch update, literally any liquid he gives it will have the exact same stats. Absolutely destroyed and in shambles on the inside, the Dark Force just mutters the name of the nasty fluid it chugged, thinking it was gourmet dining. Clapping for himself like he just dropped the greatest ethics masterclass of the modern era, the boy goes back to normal and leaves the item dumped on the floor. The next morning, the blade is literally crying non-stop abandoned on the bed, while its user swears to deliver actual food later so it drops the drama. The camera cuts hard to a spooky forest at night, where some guy is hiding behind a tree trunk gasping for air looking exhausted. The mystery dude looks completely terrified, sweating ice, suffering hard under the mind control of some unknown foreign virus. Next, a squad of tactical cops push through the bushes, while the guy drops to his knees in the dirt looking completely out of stamina from the chase. Terrified by his own pathetic stats, the bearded dude wonders how his playthrough hit such a garbage-tier ending. Before he can even answer or try to dodge again, a massive creepy entity hacks his brain and forces him to scream in absolute panic in the middle of the woods. Far away from that mess, the shiny main hub of the control agency is looking majestic in the morning sun, welcoming the day's noobs. Parked at the front desk, the MC politely asks to officially register for the risky class. Flexing some crazy high efficiency, the agency's system verifies the noob's data in 1 second and prints his ID card instantly with a beginner rank. Thinking it's super sus that he unlocked the exclusive pass that easily, the boy watches the friendly receptionist hand over a cute starter pack box. The worker smiles and drops the rule that he absolutely has to clear at least one daily weekly quest to keep his permanent pass from getting nerfed. Not really knowing what to do with the info, the beginner just stands frozen in the massive lobby, holding his newbie loot box next to his weird blade. Walking toward the exit, he thinks it's weird he didn't even have to run a tutorial or field test, while the entity grumbles angrily that it wanted to slice the exam proctor's weapon in half. Focused on not losing his standard pass on day one, the guy pulls his phone out and opens the official app to look for an easy quest in the zone. The bright screen pops up with a super basic fetch quest about scanning fragments in the dark zone, paying out an epic 1,000,001 for the whole run. The crazy high payout puts literal dollar signs in the kid's eyes, and he accepts the mission without a second thought about the difficulty scaling. A bit later, he reaches the waypoint on the map and casually strolls up to the purple rift surrounded by police tape. Scanning the lobby of players waiting at the door, the MC carefully checks the gear score of all the other pros grouped up there. Spotting the heavy-duty cannons with massive ammo in the hands of the high-level players, he finally realizes his vintage loadout is completely trash for the current meta. A duo of much older dudes starts laughing at the kid right to his face, labeling the youngster an undergeared noob just because he's packing a basic sword without any ranged support weapons. One of the veterans starts chatting, asking if it's the rookie's first drop, reminding him that nowadays anyone with a brain brings heavy impact rifles to the danger zones. Dropping a nostalgic laugh, the hyped-up guy remembers his own toxic newbie days, when he also rushed into aggro zones packing nothing but blades like an absolute madman. Ruining the chill chat lobby vibe, a strict agency cop holding a clipboard yells out that she's going to run a magic stat check on everyone before letting them zone in. One of the pros near the gate goes into complete panic when he sees his score hit 5,226 points, claiming he's shook because he literally took a 7-day break away from sweaty raids. Keeping the lore drop going at the rift entrance, the veteran explains that karma stacks up during the raid, and anyone crossing the 5,000 threshold gets ban-hammered due to corruption risk. Paying close attention to the tutorial, the newbie just nods his head. Right then, the cop calls up Pro Park Junshik, who passes the check with 2,976 points on the screen. Impressed, the woman hypes up the pro's skill to keep his stat under 3,000 even after multiple runs, calling it a straight-up natural talent. Right after, she notices it's Gon's baseline check, and the older teammate explains that starting with a low karma score means you clear your debuffs way faster. The veteran keeps explaining the meta, stating that hitting a score of 800 is already seen as a super rare buff in the community. Trying to hype the kid up, the dude bets he'll probably roll a similar score, while the cop is already calling the next player. Pro Kim Taejin rolls 4,533 points, feeling blessed he barely passed and swearing he's going AFK right after this gig. The epic moment arrives and the agent calls the MC's name, who steps up totally chill to run the scan. The cop points the scanner at the boy's head and hits the button, waiting for it to load. Checking the device's screen, the woman gets completely confused. The other pros look at the gear and go into absolute shock when they see the cursed number of 58,466 locked in. Wasting zero time, the veterans ready their rifles and aim right at the kid, screaming that his corruption is totally maxed out. The newbie bricks it, begging everyone to chill, while the woman backs away terrified, calling for backup. Tilted out of his mind, Park accuses the MC of being a hostile mob and promises to unalive him right on the spot. Absolutely terrified with the barrels pointed at his face, the kid throws his hands up to surrender. But then the cop apologizes super fast, admitting she totally misread the UI and the number actually started with a 0. The protagonist lowers his arms completely confused, while the screen shows his actual score is 0.5. With the comms error sorted out, the camera cuts to the dark and spooky rift swirling in the middle of the woods. Inside the toxic zone, the newbie walks in rocking a heavy-duty gas mask while gripping his blade. Completely out of stamina, he hunches over to catch his breath, ignoring the entity that keeps spamming requests for vital energy. Right behind him, one of the veterans also pauses the run, dying under the weight of his armor and calling for a timeout. Dropping a tired laugh, the hunter buddy jokes that Gon doesn't even need to rest since his debuff stat is basically 0. Letting out an annoyed sigh, the boy figures the scanner must be bugged and promises to re-roll his stats later, grumbling about the interruption right during his guard shift. The squad pushes forward, split up through the dark jungle, with one hunter complaining the raid is a total flop since they're only looting toxic mushrooms on the path. Out of nowhere, veteran Park starts coughing violently, looking like he's seriously struggling to pull air through his mask. Panic takes over the dude, whose eyes turn bright red from the zone's massive debuff pressure. Staring at the critical situation, the MC asks if the teammate is safe, while the others suspect he's showing major signs of corruption. Moving fast to block a party wipe, the pro pulls out a tactical stim and injects the buff straight into his arm. The heal is instant, and the pro goes back to breathing easy after his stats reset. Back to full HP, the guy promises it's all good and the stim does the trick, but the kid starts feeling regrets about joining this sketchy server. The hunter tells the newbie not to overextend and warns him to constantly monitor his mask, since the debuff meter can spike in a single frame. Right then, the sound of fast footsteps echoes through the bushes nearby. The rest of the squad groups up at the spot, asking if Park managed to spot any solid clues around. Pointing at the path ahead, the raid leader announces they found the exact zone the government told them to dodge, revealing it's a literal goblin camp. A nasty green mob jumps out of the bushes screaming violently while clutching a basic crafted hatchet. Reacting fast, the trio of snipers lines up and unleashes full auto fire right at the wave of mobs rushing them. Flexing his high-level experience, Park holds a solid stance and drops the enemies with crazy accurate headshots from his rifle. Right after, the younger pro pops a speed buff, making a gadget on his arm glow red. Using the buff, he gets this insane movement speed and dashes across the battlefield. Dodging the attacks like it's nothing, the hunter combos multiple mobs at once, roasting the monsters for having terrible ping. Watching the raid from afar, the MC realizes there's zero chance he can steal kills using just a blade, while the entity celebrates the high-quality EXP in the air. Not paying attention to the boss fight, the boy scans the area and spots a lone wooden hut way in the back of the camp. Tunnel vision has a price, as a goblin jump scares him, landing right on top of him roaring with rage. Hyped to strike, the cursed sword baits the kid, saying it knows he's a softie but pointing out that right now it's literally kill or be killed. Leaving his own weapon speechless, Gon drops a flawless critical hit, deleting the green mob in one smooth animation. Keeping his zen vibe, the youngster asks what the entity was yapping about, reminding it that he was waiting for a philosophy podcast about the value of life from it. Following that thought, he remembers the strict rules from his orphanage admin about never using PvP violence on another person. In the flashback, the innocent young MC asks if he'd get the green light to use violence if the target wasn't actually an NPC human. The admin replies with a huge smile and a thumbs up, declaring that Strat is completely authorized in that scenario. Snapping back to now, the beast getting deleted makes the entity absolutely hyped over its first actual high-tier meal in ages. A weird buff starts flowing into the boy, and the blade explains that clapping enemies lets you steal their HP. The sword keeps going, calling the other pros totally weak for crying about their debuff meters, claiming that leeching this energy is the only way to actually max your level. Cutting away from the edgy logic, the camera zooms in on one of the veterans pulling out a tactical combat knife. Focused on the loot, Park slices the ear off the defeated mob, hyped that every single drop is gonna sell for massive cash on the auction house. The guy roasts the newbie for having high ping and warns that he forgot to loot the mob, but the boy just replies that he cleared a threat near the hut. Skipping the minor drops for now, the veteran decides to focus on finding the epic loot first, betting the zone boss is hiding somewhere close. The squad moves up the path, daydreaming about the 10 million payout that unique drop will bring to fun family vacations and wedding rings. After walking a bit, the pros hit the front of a much bigger base decorated with skull assets on the door. Acting like a total Chad, the squad leader kicks the wooden door in and breaches the room with his rifle up. As soon as the dust clears, the MC stutters, completely shook by the graphics inside the house. In the dead center of the dark room, a gnarly staff is glowing with a super threatening red aura. On the floor, a bunch of dead mobs are scattered around in what looks like some freaky ritual cutscene. Right in the middle of the mess, a massive tanky beast is waiting for the raid party while wielding the glowing weapon. Flashing raging red eyes, the boss mob starts charging up an ultimate attack. Wrapped in a heavy aura, the goblin shaman raises his staff, aiming his max damage AoE spell right at the players. His minions start chanting spells to buff their master's damage output even more. The massive beast unhinges its giant jaw and lets out a terrifying roar, ready to wipe the entire party in one frame. A flashbang of light blinds the entire room in a split second. But the mage drops to the floor before even casting his spell, easily getting clapped by the veteran's rapid fire. The raid leader just awkwardly rubs the back of his neck, apologizing for getting jump-scared and dumping his entire mag out of pure panic. Moving fast on the defeated boss, the guy loots the green magical drop. The squad stares at the tiny shiny item in awe, praying it isn't a cursed drop that'll crash its market value. Super curious about the loot, Gon asks to inspect it and grabs the stone, getting a warning not to actually equip the item just to be safe. Watching the trade, the entity inside the blade goes into full panic mode seeing the danger, crying over the fact that the item landed exactly in that kid's inventory. Completely ignoring the being's warning, the kid equips the gem on his finger and celebrates, calling it his precious new drop. A massive magical glow wraps around the guy's whole avatar in a second. Teleported to a dark void map, he hears a shady voice asking if he wants to be overpowered, and he instantly hits decline. The beast keeps pushing, swearing it has admin privileges to spawn any item, so the noob instantly demands a combo meal from a famous fast food spot. Caught off guard, the being stutters, having zero clue how to process that prompt, finding it hilarious. The MC mocks the ring's uselessness, which makes it scream in rage, promising it totally has the specs for it. Trying to regain aggro, the voice demands a sacrifice in exchange for the wish. The monster demands the HP of 3 close friends, but the kid literally just starts unequipping the ring, saying he's gonna go browse other shops instead. Popping back into the server, the boy takes the ring off easily without any glitching. Terrified by the weird vibe, the squad leader points his gun at the noob and questions his sketchy behavior, totally assuming the kid got hacked by the ring. Brushing it off as a joke, Gon hands the epic loot back. Right behind him, Pro Kim starts violently coughing again. The hunter is dying for air, revealing his gas mask filter is totally busted. Scanning the room, Leader Park notices his teammates' eyes are completely pitch black and announces they need to log out of the zone right this second before a party wipe happens. Acting super glitchy, the infected guy stutters that he's fine and just needs to swap his gear's filter. Showing zero mercy, the leader aims his barrel straight at his squadmate and claims there's a much easier strat to fix this bug. Spotting the friendly fire incoming, Gon's blade screams in panic, telling the kid to dodge. Without hesitation, Park dumps a mag at point-blank range and team kills his own allies. Rocking a stone-cold face, the shooter just keeps emptying his ammo with zero chill. Stuck in the crossfire, the MC sprints for his life to avoid getting beamed. The kid takes cover behind a wooden pillar, gasping for air, while the veteran praises the noob's crazy evasion stat for dodging the last bullet. Checking his own HUD, the boy panics when he sees his mask actually took scratch damage. Furious about the toxic play, he yells out asking how the pro had the absolute nerve to PK his own party. The dude answers super casually that it's way better RNG to hog all the epic loot for himself than to split it 5 ways. Mind blown by the greed, the newbie warns that the admins will find out everything, but the boss swears the instance will close the second he leaves and no one will ever check the logs. Pushing forward, the traitor declares he just needs to delete the kid to make his perfect run happen. He fires again, but the boy dodges with insane movement speed, making the shooter rage. Running for dear life, Gon tries to break his ankles by juking constantly, while bullets rip up the dirt right behind his hitbox. The boy sprints to find cover behind another piece of the hut. Casually reloading his weapon, the leader taunts him, asking how long the kid actually thinks he can keep dodging. Out of nowhere, the traitor gets jump-scared spotting something flying in from his peripheral. Taking his one opening, the MC chucks his dark blade spinning like a boomerang straight at the boss. The shooter easily dodges the random attack and insults the boy, calling him a total bot. Flexing his ego, he claims tossing away his only weapon was a fatal misplay. But a random sound makes the veteran snap his neck back in absolute horror. In a totally busted move, Gon teleports exactly to the spot where the sword landed and grabs his weapon back instantly. Leaving 0 frames to react, the boy lands a perfect crit and slices the enemy's rifle straight in half. The speed blitz completely deletes the ranged weapon, leaving the traitor with 0 cooldowns left. The duo stands frozen face to face in a super tense standoff, with the leader holding just the broken pieces of his gun. The heavy vibe gets worse as the pro realizes he just lost his massive advantage in the PvP. The newbie's face twists into a terrifying psycho smile. Hijacked by fear, Park spins on his heels and books it while the boy rushes him. The MC lands a hit on the traitor's back, screaming an epic voice line about the true code of a fighter. Tanking the damage, the veteran pops his red magic arm gadget, begging for max speed buff. The spell launches the guy, who blasts off in a desperate escape, leaving the kid in the dust. With huge shocked eyes, Gon chases the enemy, screaming that he won't unalive him, just chop off a limb as a penalty. Sweating ice, the traitor keeps running from the absolute madman and begs the kid to stay away. The pro keeps up his frantic dash through the spooky woods of the magic zone. Thinking he broke aggro, he hides by a tree trunk, breathing super heavy. Spitting up some red HP, the guy notices his own mask is cracked too and decides to just sprint straight for the exit portal. A sudden flashback hits the traitor's brain and he completely freezes up. He realizes he escaped with literally 0 loot and left the epic magic ring sitting next to his downed teammates. Gritting his teeth in pure rage, the veteran realizes he has to backtrack to the camp zone. Suddenly, the terrifying face of the MC spawns in the darkness right next to him, forcing a scream of panic out of the leader. The dude goes back to sprinting and screaming, trying to kite the spooky apparition. Thinking fast, he locks onto the objective of just snatching the ring and dipping through the portal once and for all. Hitting the clearing, he spots a flawless rifle dropped next to one of his old squadmates. Landing a desperate jump, the traitor snags the weapon and drops a villain laugh, claiming the kid is officially game over. Taking a knee, the shooter adzes and waits for the enemy to render. But he spots a terrifying shadow standing completely still and silent right in front of him. Dripping with thick purple energy, teammate Kim stares down the boss while the veteran struggles to stutter his name out. Going absolute feral mode, the corrupted pro lunges and strikes the traitor directly, launching him into the air. Pulling up to the camp right after, Gon stops dead in his tracks, totally shook by the brutal cutscene. Flashing eyes glowing a creepy shade through his mask, Pro Kim radiates a terrifying aura, totally hijacked by the corruption.